Hi, welcome back to Educator.com's AP Music Theory course. Today's lesson is inverting seventh chords. Okay, for the objectives for this lesson, it's going to be very similar to the last lesson. We're going to learn how to build, this time, seventh chords in first, second, and now third inversion. And then, of course, we're going to go through and look at the figured bass symbols for these inverted seventh chords. Okay, so let's look at seventh chords in first inversion. So easiest way to do that, again, is to start with a root position chord, root position seventh chord. So let's take, how about in C major, let's take our trusty C major chord with a seventh added. So C, E, G, B. So now we're dealing with these four-note chords. And of course, the concept of inversion is going to remain the same, luckily. So a first inversion seventh chord is like a first inversion triad in that the third of the chord is in the bass. So I can rewrite this chord with the third as the lowest note, E, G, B, C. So the only difference here is, of course, this fourth note, the seventh, which gives us a different looking arrangement of notes. We see now that what was a seventh between the bass voice and the upper voice is now this interval of a second here on the top. So here is first inversion, seventh chord, and just for review, I'll write again that the third of the chord is in the bass. Okay, moving on to second inversion. Let's start with a different chord this time. What about a D dominant seventh chord? So D, F sharp, A, C. And we're going to put this in second inversion, but just for fun, let's go through first inversion to get there. So first inversion means the third is in the bass. And now second inversion, as we recall from the previous lesson, is the fifth in the bass. So now we move the F sharp up and we have A, C, D, F sharp. So here's root, here's first, and here is second inversion. So fifth in bass. Okay, let's do one more example of a second inversion seventh chord. What about a minor seventh chord? So let's take A minor 7, A, C, E, G. So here's root position, and let's jump right to second inversion. So we know that second inversion is the fifth in the bass. So I look here and I see that the fifth is E. So I'm going to write it as the lowest voice of this chord. And now we have G, and then an A, and then a C. And here's my second inversion, A minor seventh chord. Okay, so of course triads have three notes, and therefore we can only have two inversions before we're back to root position. But seventh chords have four notes, which means there's the possibility of one more inversion, which is the seventh, of course, of the chord being the lowest note. So let's start again with our original C seventh chord as we explore this new inversion and go through. So we've got, here's first inversion, here's second inversion, and now third inversion, we're going to have the seventh, the B, as the lowest note. So let's write that down here. So B, and then the C major triad above it. So here's root, first, second, and now third, which is seventh in bass. And of course, just to hit this point again, the only thing that matters with inversions of chords is what's in the lowest voice. So as long as this B is the lowest note, the C, E, and the G, as long as they're all there, can be in any arrangement. So this is third inversion, and of course B and then G, C, E. This is still third inversion, and so on. Let's do one more example of a third inversion chord. So what about an E major 7 chord? So if we're in E major, we'd have a 1, 7. So here it is, and I'll supply the correct accidentals. And now we want this D sharp to be in the bass, since of course in third inversion the 7th is in the bass. So I'll write the D sharp here, and then the most compact way to write it is again to start immediately with the E and move up to the G sharp and the B. But of course I'll write it in some other arrangements. So we could have G sharp, B, E, D sharp, B, E, G sharp. So again, these are all third inversion, because the 7th is in the bass. Okay, now let's look at the figured bass symbols for these inverted 7th chords. So let's start with first inversion 7th chord. So we had that C major 7 chord inverted. So here it is. And as we recall, first inversion again, third in the bass. So here we are, and then we have the rest of the notes, C, E, G, B. And let's pretend like we're in C major, so this is going to be a Roman numeral 1. And now we need to have the correct intervals above this. So let's see what those are. So we have a third, so we'll write the third first. And then from the bass, we have a fifth up from E to B, so here's 5. And then, of course, above that from the bass, we have a sixth. So we see that the arrangement of notes in this inverted 7th chord is 6, 5, 3. So this symbol will always denote a first inversion 7th chord. And of course, we saw before that the third is always implied, so we may or may not choose to write it. So we can write 1, 6, 5, 3, or we can write 1, 6, 5. Okay, let's look at a second inversion 7th chord. So let's keep the same C major 7 triad, and now we're going to invert it so that the 5th is in the bass. So that means G in this case, so G, B, C, E. So now this is of course no longer a 6, 5, but what is it? Let's see. So we have a third, and then we have a fourth, and then above that we have another sixth, a sixth. So in this case, we can't leave out the 3, of course, because if we did, then we would confuse this for a 6-4 chord. So we can write this, we can continue to write this as 6-4-3, which means second inversion 7th chord. And down here, let's do a couple examples of the third inversion 7th chord. First, let's stick with what we were doing up here in C. So, of course, for third inversion, we remember the 7th is in the bass, so here it is the 7th as the lowest note, and then above that a C, E, and a G. And let's look at the intervals from the bass again. So from B to C is a second, and then from B to E is a fourth, and from B to G is a sixth. So we have 6-4-2, which is third inversion 7th. And let's do one more example of third inversion 7th chord. So what if we take in C major the 5 chord, the dominant 7th. So here it is in root position, symbolized by this 7. And let's move it to third inversion, which means that here's the seventh, the F needs to be in the bass. So I will write the F here and then the G major chord above it. And let's look at the intervals again. 2, 4, and then from F up to D is a 6. So of course, remember when we're dealing with figured bass symbols, the numbers always represent the voice from the bass. So here's two examples of third inversion seventh chord. Okay, for our first practice problem, let's say we are given a key like G major, and we are asked to find a 2, 6, 5, 3. So we recall from the work we've just done that 6, 5, 3 is first inversion. So why don't we start with a root position 2, 7 first. So let's see, in G major, the second degree is A. And we can write the seventh chord above that. And of course, the key signature is 1 sharp on F, so we don't need to worry about accidentals for this chord. So here's the root position seventh chord, and we know that there's a few ways we can do this. So we know that 6, 5, 3 is first inversion, which means that the third is going to be in the bass. So here we see the third is C, so we can write C as the lowest voice and then build the rest of the seventh chord up from that. And as a check, we can make sure we have the correct intervals. So here's a third from the bass, and then a fifth from the bass from C to G, and then of course a sixth from the bass from C to A. So this is correct. And the other way we could have done this would be, instead of knowing that 6, 5, 3 is first inversion, we could have simply built these intervals up. So how could we do that with a 2, 7 chord? We would have had to find the correct inversion. So we could have written C, E, G, A, and then C, or E, G, A, C, and then the last one, G, A, C, E. And now we've gone through all the inversions, and we just need to find which one is in this arrangement of 6, 5, 3. And of course, here it is. Okay, for example 2, let's say we are given a bass note. How about a C? And we are asked to put a second inversion seventh chord above this. So how do we do that? We recall that second inversion seventh has the fifth in the bass. So the first way to do it is to think about this C as the fifth of some chord. And let's say we are asked to do a major second inversion seventh. So C as the fifth of the chord, we can spell down to get the chord. So here it is. And this turns out to already be F major without any accidentals. So we're okay here. And then we know we're dealing with seventh chords, so we need to add an E above it. And now we have the 4 notes we need for our seventh chord, and now we just need to make sure they're in the right inversion. So from C up, we need to add the correct notes. So C, E, F, A. And if we wanted to check this, we can remember our figured bass symbols. So we recall that second inversion is 6, 4, 3. So we need to check for a third up from the bass. Here it is. A fourth up from the bass. Here it is. And then a sixth up from the bass to A. And here it is. So that's correct. And if we wanted to do this a different way, let's do it down here again. So major second inversion. So we were given a C, and this time instead of thinking about the C as a fifth of some triad, let's start immediately with the 6-4-3 structure. So we will put a third above the bass, fourth above the bass, C to F, and then a sixth above the bass, C to A. And now what we need to do is make sure that we provide the correct accidentals to make this into a major seventh chord. So we can check to see if it's major by putting it in root position. It's the easiest way to do it. And we see that it's an F major seventh and that we're done with the problem. So here it is. Okay, for a third example, let's look at a third inversion seventh chord. So what if this time we're given a key and a Roman numeral with the inversion and asked to supply the correct seventh chord? So let's say we're in A major and we are asked to give a 5, 6, 4, 2. So first step would be to think about the key signature of A major. So we can write that here for convenience. F sharp, C sharp, G sharp. And now let's think about 5, 7 in root position. So of course the fifth degree in A is E. And then we can build the seventh chord up from that. And from the key signature we see that we need a G sharp. And now the final step is to make sure this is in third inversion, which we remember means that the seventh now is in the bass. So here's the seventh, the D. So we'll put that in the lowest voice, and building up from there, a 2, a 4, and a 6 with the sharp from the key signature. And here is our 5, 6, 4, 2 in A. And for example 4, let's start with a given bass note and say we're asked to find another third inversion seventh chord. So what about E flat? So from here we need to find a 6, 4, 2 chord, and let's say we're asked to find a dominant 6, 4, 2. So a few steps here. First of all, we can build the intervals above the bass. So we know we need a 2, which is an F, and then a 4 from E flat is A, and a 6 above E flat is C. And now we need to make sure that we have the correct arrangement, the correct chord quality, so we can check the interval arrangement. So I'll write it in root position first to help. And we know that a dominant seventh chord is the following structure. It needs to be, what, a major third on the bottom, followed by a minor third on the top, and then the seventh is also another minor third. So let's see what we have here so far. So we know that F to A is a major third, and A to C is a minor third. Mostly, we can find this because we see that this is a simple F major triad. And so all that's left is to make sure that C to E flat is a minor third. And we can do that by, for instance, thinking about C minor. And we find, in fact, that it is a minor third. So we're actually done with this problem and not needing to add any more accidentals to this. Okay, thanks again for visiting educator.com's AP Music Theory course.